There comes a time when a man must stop asking, "What do women want?" and start asking, "What am I allowing?" Too many men are stuck in silent frustration, not because women are the problem, but because no one taught them what not to do. No one told them that being a good man doesn't mean being a doormat, that loving a woman doesn't mean losing yourself. In this video, we're not here to bash, to blame, or to beg for validation. We're here to speak truth, boldly, clearly, because the real power isn't in chasing her approval, it's in mastering your behavior. These are 8 things a man should never, ever do with a woman if he truly values himself. There is a strange belief that many men have been conditioned to hold, that their value in a woman's life must be demonstrated, proven, even advertised, as though they are at an eternal audition, waiting to be picked. But here's the uncomfortable truth that many don't want to hear. The more you try to prove your worth to a woman, the less worthy you begin to look. That urge to impress, to be chosen, to win her approval at all costs, it's rooted in insecurity. In women, we can sense that energy from a mile away. Let's be honest, from childhood, boys are taught to be providers, protectors, achievers. All beautiful traits. But when these qualities are weaponized as tools to gain a woman's validation, they become performance-based. And nothing about that feels authentic. You see, real attraction isn't about convincing someone to like you. It's not about demonstrating your achievements or showcasing your status. It's about presence, it's about grounding, it's about knowing your worth so deeply that you never need to explain it. There's a quiet confidence in a man who knows he doesn't need to jump through hoops for a woman's attention. He doesn't flex. He doesn't compete. He doesn't chase, not because he's arrogant, but because he knows that anyone who doesn't recognize his value isn't his concern. And that kind of man is magnetic. But many men fall into a dangerous trap. They overgive, they overshare, they overpromise, they compromise their own boundaries just to appear worthy. They pay for everything too early. They offer their time, energy, even emotional labor before anything is earned. And it's not generosity, it's desperation disguised as kindness. Women know the difference. We can feel when you're doing things not from abundance, but from a deep fear of not being enough. It's not the car you drive or the career you built or the compliments you offer that create desire. It's the energy behind your actions. When you operate from a place of, "I hope she picks me," you disempower yourself. And here's the irony. The more you try to prove your worth, the more you come off as unsure of it. The more you chase, the more you communicate that you believe she's above you. And no woman wants a man who believes she's the prize and he's just lucky to be noticed. No, she wants a man who already feels whole, who can add to her life, not beg to be in it. Men need to understand that trying to prove your worth is rooted in a misunderstanding of attraction itself. You think that if you show her enough good qualities, she'll choose you. But it doesn't work that way. Attraction is not a checklist. It's a vibe. It's how she feels when she's around you. It's how you carry yourself. It's whether your presence makes her feel safe, inspired, curious. That can't be proven with gifts or praise. That can only be felt. When a man tries to prove himself, he also gives away all his power. He becomes reactive. He waits for her to respond. He checks his phone constantly to see if she texted back. He interprets her silence as a signal to try harder. But the truth is, your value isn't dependent on her reaction. And any woman who truly respects herself will not be attracted to a man who places her on a pedestal while abandoning his own. This is not about being cold or detached. It's about understanding that worth doesn't need to be proven, it needs to be owned. A man who owns his worth doesn't panic when a woman pulls away. He doesn't flood her with attention to win her back. He doesn't rearrange his entire schedule just to accommodate hers. He has a full life, a life he values. And if she fits into it, beautiful. But if she doesn't, he doesn't lose himself trying to force it. You don't need to perform. You don't need to convince. The woman who sees you, who feels your presence, who aligns with your essence, she will not need you to prove. anything. She will feel it. But she can't feel it if you're always trying to impress her instead of being real with her. She can't connect with you if you're too busy managing her perception of you. There is power in restraint. There is power in silence. There is power in being grounded enough to say, "This is who I am. Take it or leave it." That's not arrogance. That's emotional maturity. And that is what separates boys from men. Because when a man is secure in himself, he doesn't need to chase. He attracts. And not just any woman, but the right woman. The one who doesn't require proof, but feels drawn to your truth. There is something sacred about mystery, about slowly unfolding who you are, layer by layer. And yet, in the name of honesty or connection, many men fall into a trap. They reveal too much, too soon. They think that full transparency, instant emotional access, or opening the vault of their life stories will deepen the bond. But it doesn't. In fact, it often does the opposite. What was once intriguing becomes predictable. What could have sparked curiosity ends up feeling rushed, overwhelming, or worse, desperate. Here's the truth many men don't understand. Women are not drawn to what's already been fully explored. We are drawn to the unfolding, the energy of discovery, the unspoken spaces that leave us wondering. When you meet someone new and you pour everything out on the table from day one, your childhood traumas, your bank balance, your goals, your weaknesses, your past heartbreaks, what you're really doing is skipping the dance, and the dance matters. That buildup of emotional and mental intrigue is what creates connection. Not the content of your life, but how you present it. When a man overshares too soon, it signals a lack of emotional regulation. It can feel like he's trying to fast-track intimacy, like he's seeking validation through vulnerability. And vulnerability is beautiful, but only when it's earned. When it's offered as a gift, not as a plea. Because not everyone you meet has earned the right to your inner world. And when you hand it over without discernment, you risk being misunderstood, misjudged, or even emotionally manipulated. Emotional intimacy must be built with trust and time. You don't walk into a stranger's house and go straight into their bedroom. You start at the door, maybe you sit in the living room, maybe later you're invited to the kitchen. Relationships work the same way. Every room of your life should be opened with care, with mutual investment. Not because you're hoping that by showing all your cards, she'll stay. She may smile, she may listen, but deep down, she'll feel like she didn't earn any of what you gave her. And when people don't have to earn access, they rarely value it. Think about it. When something is freely available, with no challenge, no anticipation, no mystery, it quickly loses its appeal. This doesn't mean you should play games or pretend to be someone you're not. But it does mean you should be intentional about how and when you reveal parts of yourself. Timing isn't about manipulation. It's about wisdom, about knowing that intimacy grows in layers, not leaps. Women are emotional beings, yes, but we are also intuitive. We can sense when a man is offloading his truth because he's hoping for closeness, but the moment it feels like an emotional dump instead of an emotional connection, it's no longer attractive. And in many cases, it creates imbalance. She becomes the listener, the emotional caretaker, the therapist. And that's not the role she came for. That's not the energy she wants to step into. A man who understands the power of emotional pacing knows that not every moment requires full disclosure. He can be honest without being exposed. He can be open without being raw. He doesn't rush connection. He allows it to deepen naturally. He knows how to sit in silence, how to let questions linger, how to leave just enough unsaid so that interest remains alive. What's even more dangerous about oversharing is that it can backfire. You may think you're building closeness, but if you share too much too soon, you might scare her off. Not because your story isn't valid, but because the emotional weight you're handing her isn't hers to carry yet. She hasn't developed the bond with you to process your pain or hold space for your struggles. And when that emotional weight comes without context, it creates distance, not connection. You have to remember that trust is not something you demand. It's something you build, slowly and intentionally. And part of that process is learning to hold your own emotional space before asking someone else to hold it for you. Especially early on, your goal shouldn't be to be known entirely, but to be felt. Your presence, your energy, your self-awareness. Those things speak louder than any story you could tell. This is where emotional discipline comes in. You can feel deeply without showing everything. You can connect without confessing your entire history. That's not being guarded, that's being wise. Because not every woman deserves your vulnerability. Not every woman is equipped to hold it. And giving it too freely is not noble, it's careless. The man who can pause before revealing too much, who allows room for curiosity to grow, who resists the urge to fast forward the emotional script, that man becomes unforgettable. Because he gives her the gift of discovery. He makes her want to know more, not because he's hiding, but because he's grounded. He's selective. And that selectiveness tells her something powerful, that his inner world is valuable, and only those who show up with care and consistency get to see it. There's something undeniably beautiful about devotion, about the way a man chooses to prioritize, protect, and love a woman. But when that devotion becomes obsession, when her presence begins to eclipse your own identity, that love quickly turns into something else. And whether you realize it or not, when you make a woman the center of your world, you don't elevate her. You lose yourself. And in the process, you lose her too. There is a natural desire, especially early on, to impress her, to make her feel special, to carve out space in your life that shows her she matters. That's normal. That's human. But somewhere along the line, too many men confuse love with complete emotional dependency. They begin to orbit around her, her needs, her schedule, her moods. They drop their own plans, abandon their goals, distance themselves from friends, even silence their own desires, all in the name of being the perfect partner. But it doesn't work. It never has. Women may appreciate attention, yes, but they respect independence. And when that independence begins to dissolve, so does the attraction. Because a man who sacrifices his entire identity for a relationship doesn't look committed, he looks lost. And no woman wants to be with a man who has nothing going on for himself except her. It may sound romantic on the surface, but deep down, it's suffocating. There is something grounding about a man who is anchored in purpose, who has a life beyond the relationship, who has things that matter to him deeply: his craft, his passion, his mission, his friends, his personal growth. That doesn't mean he ignores the woman in his life. It means he doesn't make her his everything. And believe it or not, that balance is what creates the most magnetic kind of presence. When a woman feels like she's stepping into a man's already full, thriving world, not becoming the world itself. That's when real respect is born. The irony is, the more you orbit around her, the more she feels the pressure to become something she's not, to perform, to stay interesting, to keep carrying the emotional weight of being your entire universe. And when that pressure builds, so does the desire to pull away, because no one wants to feel like someone else's life would fall apart without them. That's not romance. That's codependency. Men who make a woman the center of their world usually do it with good intentions. They want to show loyalty. They want to be different from the men who ignored her, who took her for granted. But what they don't realize is that in trying so hard to be the opposite, they still lose balance. Because whether you're too distant or too available, too cold or too invested, extremes are always dangerous. The sweet spot is found in a man who knows how to love deeply, but still stand on his own 2 feet. When your world begins to revolve around someone else, you stop growing. You stop showing up for yourself. You start waiting for her to text, waiting for her to validate you, waiting for her to decide where the relationship goes. You become passive in your own life. And a woman can feel that, even if she doesn't say it out loud. She feels the shift. The way your gaze turns into dependence, the way your ambition starts fading into the background, The way your energy becomes less about leading and more about following. And slowly, what started as love becomes imbalance. A man with boundaries, with structure, with things to do and places to be, is a man who maintains his power. He doesn't cancel important meetings just because she wants to talk. He doesn't scroll for hours waiting for her to respond. He doesn't lose sleep wondering what she's thinking, not because he doesn't care, but because he's centered. And that centered energy, that grounded masculinity, that's what makes a woman feel safe. That's what makes her respect you. Because now, instead of carrying your emotional weight, she can rest in the presence of a man who carries his own. Women want to be chosen, yes, but not consumed. There's a difference. Choosing a woman means you value her. Consuming her means you've abandoned yourself. And when she becomes your sun and you just become a planet spinning around her, you forget that you once had your own light, your own gravity, your own rhythm. A relationship should be a partnership between two whole people, not a lifeline for someone who's disconnected from themselves. Keep your hobbies, keep your routines, keep your friendships, keep your discipline. These aren't things that get in the way of love. They are the things that preserve it. A woman is most drawn to a man who has a reason to wake up in the morning that's bigger than her. Because when you have purpose, when you have vision, when you're building something of your own, she sees that you're not just available, you're valuable. There's a dangerous lie many men have bought into, that if they tolerate just a little bit of disrespect, if they let certain things slide, if they stay calm while being emotionally pushed around, they'll win her over. That if they don't speak up, if they stay nice, if they keep being understanding, she'll see how good they are and treat them better. But the truth is brutal and undeniable. The moment you start accepting disrespect from a woman just to keep her, you've already lost her. Respect is not a favor. It's not something you earn by doing more. It's the foundation of any real connection. Once it's broken, everything else becomes performance. You can't build trust on top of silence. You can't build love on top of fear. And when a man swallows his voice, allows himself to be disrespected, or lets things go in order to maintain peace, what he's really doing is abandoning himself, not for love, but for the illusion of love. Disrespect doesn't always look loud. It can come in subtle forms. Sarcasm that cuts too deep, comparisons to other men, dismissive comments, emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, ignoring boundaries. And often it starts small. A little jab here, a little coldness there. You notice it, but you brush it off. Maybe she was in a mood. Maybe she didn't mean it. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, but what you don't realize is that every time you tolerate it without saying something, you train her on how to treat you. You condition her to believe that your peace is not worth protecting. And once that line is crossed without consequence, it will be crossed again. A man who knows his worth doesn't need to scream or argue. He simply doesn't stay where his dignity is constantly being chipped away. He doesn't justify bad behavior or try to fix someone who doesn't even see a problem. Because staying with a woman who disrespects you isn't strength. It's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear that you won't find someone else. And fear makes you accept things you would have never tolerated if you believed in your own value. Sometimes, disrespect is masked as jokes. She mocks your dreams, teases you in front of her friends, questions your intelligence, laughs when you're vulnerable, and because you don't want to seem sensitive or insecure, you let it pass. But deep down, you feel it. That sting in your chest, that quiet voice telling you, this isn't right. And still, you stay. You convince yourself that love means compromise, but compromise should never cost you your self-respect. There are moments when you must be willing to walk away, not to teach her a lesson, not to get revenge, but to protect the sacredness of your own identity. When a woman sees that you will not bend to stay in her life, she sees your strength. And even if it costs you the relationship, you win something greater: your freedom, your clarity, your power. Men who constantly tolerate disrespect eventually become shells of who they once were. They become bitter, resentful, tired. They stop speaking up. They start walking on eggshells. They lose their spark. And what's worse, that woman no longer even sees them as the man she once admired. Because you cannot respect a man who doesn't respect himself. You cannot love a man who keeps shrinking to avoid conflict. You cannot desire a man who becomes passive just to keep the peace. Respect is not a request, it's a standard. A woman should know from the beginning that there are lines she cannot cross. And those lines are not enforced through threats or shouting. They're enforced through action, through your silence when she's trying to bait you, through your calm exit when she tries to belittle you, through your refusal to stay in spaces that treat you like you're disposable. The most powerful thing a man can do is enforce his boundaries with grace. Not anger, not ego, but certainty. The certainty that says, I want you, but I don't need you. I love you, but I won't lose myself for you. I'm here, but only if I'm treated with the same respect I offer. That energy is rare. That energy is unshakable. And it's that energy that demands honor. Not through force, but through presence. Disrespect, once accepted, never disappears. It mutates. It grows. And the longer you tolerate it, the harder it becomes to reverse. Because what you allow continues. And one day, you wake up in a dynamic where you're no longer seen as a partner, but as someone to control, someone to emotionally dominate. And by then, the damage is deep. If a woman doesn't respect you, nothing else matters. Not the dates, not the gifts, not how much history you share. Because love without respect isn't love, it's attachment. An attachment that requires you to sacrifice your voice, your peace, your identity is not worth keeping. Not ever. The most dangerous thing a man can do is betray himself, just to keep someone who doesn't see his worth. Every time you shrink, silence yourself, or accept less, you tell the world that you're available for disrespect. But you weren't made to be tolerated. You were made to be honored. So the question isn't just, what will she think if I stop doing these things? The real question is, what kind of man will I become when I do? Choose wisely, because your peace, your presence, and your power, they're not negotiable.